The Denver Center for the Performing Arts Off Center and the Museum of Contemporary Art Denver present Mixed Taste at Home. Virtual tag team lectures about unrelated topics. And now, introducing tonight's unlikely pairing, napping and Slovenian zombies. And here are your hosts, Sarah Bai and Charlie Miller.
Hello, hello. I'm Sarah Bai. I'm the Director of Programming at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Denver.
And I'm Charlie Miller, Off-Center Curator at the Denver Center for the Performing Arts. Welcome to Mixed Taste at Home.
We are coming to you live from our homes. Our guests are in their homes, presumably, and we are glad that you are tuning in from your home.
For those of you who are joining us for the first time, Off-Center produces unexpected theatrical experiences.
And the Museum of Contemporary Art Denver is a contemporary art museum in Denver. And Mixed Taste, this summer series, has been going on since 2005. It started at the lab at Belmar. It became an institution at the Museum of Contemporary Art. And Off-Center became a producer 4 years ago in 2017.
Yeah. Tonight we're live streaming on YouTube and Facebook. And to keep it interesting, we're going to have some chances for you to comment, to play a game, and to win a prize at the end.
But whether you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, you need to log in before you can comment. So either click on the Say Something box or the Write a Comment box at the bottom of your live chat to get started. Now, if you're watching this from a TV, commenting is tricky, and you're better off just doing it from a computer or a tablet or whatever.
One of tonight's topics is napping. So to get the conversation going, why don't you all share the best location where you've taken a nap in the live chat box right now, and we'll show you how it works. So where is the best location you've taken a nap, Sarah?
You know, I'm not a napper, Charlie. The last time I took a nap, I was like, wow, that was weird, and I found out I was pregnant. So that it's been a while, and I'm not a big napper. Oh, what about you? Where's the last time?
I'm also not a big napper, although I have been known to take a nap in the middle of reading my daughters a story.
Let's see. We've got some comments. Lots of people are saying that they like to nap on the beach. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, and Maya here likes to nap in a dog bed, or has taken a nap in a dog bed.
Someone says, Cheryl Clark says she likes to nap in the car, which seems ill-advised.
I agree. There's a lot of hammocks here, patio, very nice.
You know, sofas in the car, parking garage at work. Okay, well, that makes more sense. If the car's not moving, I think you can maybe nap in the car.
Congratulations, Stephanie. I think that's our best nap of the night so far, but there will be more. So in case you're wondering what you wandered into or why YouTube recommended this video to you, Mixed Taste is a mashup series where we bring together two experts who each present on different topics. And then we have a live question and answer session on both topics at the same time.
At the same time. We're going to get that right one of these days. So the rules are very simple. The first speaker speaks on their topic for 20 minutes, and then the second speaker speaks on a completely unrelated topic for 20 minutes. And during the first part of the program, there are no connections between either of the topics, but during the Q&A, anything can happen.
Anything can happen. Between the talks tonight, we're going to play a quick game. And at the end of the evening, we will have a local poet perform an original poem inspired by the show. Our topics for this evening are napping and Slovenian zombies.
And it is my pleasure to introduce our first guest tonight, Maya Kroth. Maya is a writer, she's a radio producer, and a journalist who's reported from 5 countries on assignment for outlets including Foreign Policy, TheAtlantic.com, The Washington Post, The Christian Science Monitor, and PRI's The World. As a nap enthusiast, she received a Fulbright to study the siesta in Spain. So please welcome Maya Kroth.
Hey, it's great to be back at Mixed Taste for the second year in a row to talk about napping. You might have noticed napping's making something of a comeback since these COVID-19 lockdowns began. A lot of people are on work from home, rediscovering the joy of an afternoon nap. Maybe you're even one of those people. I was never one of those people. From an early age, I really detested napping. Here's documentary evidence of me on vacation with my family in Mexico circa 1980. Definitely not napping, much to my parents' chagrin. I think I've always felt that there was something better I could be doing with my time than sleeping in the middle of the day, something more fun, something more productive. But that all changed about 8 years ago when I started researching a book on the history of napping. And the scientists and scholars and activists that I met along the way really changed my tune, led me to change my tune about the nap. And they gave me a long list of reasons why napping is actually great. So tonight I'm going to share a few of those with you tonight. 5 good reasons and 1 great one to take a nap. First of all, it's natural. Napping is biologically hardwired. This is not just something that people do if they happen to live in a Mediterranean country or a place where it's hot. This is actually encoded in our circadian rhythms. The circadian rhythms is basically your body's internal clock, right? It tells you when to sleep, when to wake up, when to eat. It does a bunch of other things, regulates your emotions, your hormones. And everybody's circadian rhythms are a little bit different, but they all follow this same basic flow, right? You are more alert in the morning, and then here in the mid-afternoon, there's that little dip. Researchers call that the circadian trough. Usually happens in the early afternoon, about 6 to 8 hours after you've woken up. You start feeling a little less alert, a little sleepier. If you happen to live in a culture that says napping is cool, you might take a nap. If you were me and working in an office, this is the time when I would angrily walk over to the office Nespresso machine, pour a cappuccino, and try to make it until 5 o'clock. So not only is it natural, napping is also good for your health. There's tons of research out there that supports the idea that it's healthful to nap. So one study that I found really interesting was a lot of these Mediterranean countries started phasing out their siesta schedules starting in the 90s and moving to a more Americanized 9-to-5 workday. And some researchers at Harvard wanted to quantify the effects of this cultural change on Greek adults. So they did this 6-year-long study of more than 23,000 Greeks and tried to understand what was the difference between those who had stopped taking their daily siesta versus those who maintained the similar schedule as before. And it was pretty heartbreaking results. None of the participants had a history of heart disease or stroke at the start of the study, but by the end, the people who had stopped taking a nap had a 37% higher risk of death from heart disease. There's also new evidence that came out last spring that just taking a nap can lower your blood pressure almost as much as a pill. That's a big deal because about half of Americans suffer from hypertension, and we spend about $100 billion a year on blood pressure medication. Napping almost as effective and free. There's also a lot of science that shows that napping makes you perform better. This applies whether you're an athlete or an artist or a politician. Napping is associated with increased alertness and motor coordination. This is a fact that's not been lost on athletes like LeBron James. Inveterate napper, doesn't miss his pregame nap. I think it's served him pretty well in his career so far. Napping is also improves focus and memory. Sleep science is a relatively new area of medical research, and there's a lot of things researchers still don't know about exactly why we sleep and the purpose that it serves. But there's a growing consensus that sleep and napping have something to do with memory and helping the brain decide of all the information it takes in the day, what's the important stuff to save and what stuff can we get rid of. So napping, something that happens in the napping is loops of electrical current are going between the area of the brain that stores short-term memories and the area of the brain that stores long-term memories. So researchers can actually watch these electrical currents, watch the brain deciding which files to keep and which to get rid of, as it were. Napping also fosters creativity. It enables the brain to make connections with seemingly unrelated concepts And this is something that artists and writers have known for a long time. Ernest Hemingway was a big napper. He kept a full-sized bed in his office. So when he would take his daily siesta, he'd lay down with his favorite cat, sleeping on his chest, and take a nap. Salvador Dali, surrealist painter, was also a big fan of napping. He was fascinated with this state of consciousness between sleep and waking that's called hypnagogia. He believed that hypnagogia was this state where you could access the crazy imagery that you might see in a dream with your conscious mind. And so in order to achieve hypnagogia, here's what he would do. He had a very peculiar method for taking a nap. You might have heard this. He would sit in a chair with a heavy key in one hand and then a metal platter that he would put on the floor next to his chair. And he would start to doze off just long enough to lose his grip on the key. It would fall to the plate, make a big noise, and wake him up. So just a little micro siesta. But he said that this enabled him to access all of this imagery that you might see in paintings like these. The one on the right with a tiger coming out of a fish, coming out of a pomegranate, it's called Dream Caused by the Flight of a Bee Around a Pomegranate a Second Before Awakening. And Winston Churchill also knew well the power of a good nap. Even in the depths of World War II, he was said to nap on the regular. He said, you must sleep sometime between lunch and dinner. He said, you have to even go so far as take off your clothes and climb into bed. Don't think you'll be doing less work because you sleep during the day. He said, you're actually going to accomplish more. You get 2 days in one. Now, since Churchill's time, the science has backed this up. Napping does make you more productive. This is something that's not been lost on corporations like Google, which have started installing these high-tech nap pods on campus to wring every last ounce of productivity out of their workers. So it's natural, it's good for your health, it improves your performance. There's also some interesting stuff that happens if you don't take a nap during that little circadian trough we talked about. According to Daniel Pink, who wrote a really fascinating book called When, all about perfect timing, things get a little bit more dangerous at nap time when people are a little bit less alert. Anesthesiologists are more likely to give a fatal dose of anesthesia in the afternoon. Nurses are 10% less likely to wash their hands. You get more car crashes between 2 and 4 p.m. And judges are more likely to give harsher sentences when they come back from their lunch breaks. So schedule your surgeries and your court cases for the morning if you can. All right, so we've got all these great reasons why napping is good for you and why we all should do it. So it led me to wonder what happened? Like, why don't we do it more in this country? Why did I grow up with this idea that napping was stupid, that it was for lazy people, that it just wasn't a good use of my time? Well, you could probably guess. Capitalism happened. A lot of writers on sleep blame capitalism for messing with our sleep. And our sleep has definitely been messed with. We're chronically sleep deprived. We spend billions of dollars a year on sleeping pills. And that's nighttime sleep and daytime sleep. So what is it about capitalism that did this? Well, time is money, right? So if you want to take a nap in the afternoon, you might as well just burn up a $100 bill, right? This is the attitude that I grew up with. Then we also have capitalism in this country is built on the Protestant work ethic and this idea that, you know, if you work hard and sleep less, it justifies your location up here at the top of this capitalist pyramid. And we have a long tradition of capitalists who boast about how little sleep they need. Thomas Edison said he never needed more than 4 or 5 hours of sleep. I don't know if you remember Donald Trump teased Hillary Clinton for admitting to napping. Capitalism has to create myths that justify this exploitation that is kind of unjustifiable. But these myths suggest that you can get to the top of this pyramid by working hard and not sleeping. But the people at the bottom, you know, those laborers, people who worked on plantations and in factories, those were the ones you had to worry about. The ones who tended toward laziness, and you had to watch out for them. And these myths generated some stereotypes that we're all familiar with. You might have seen this motif, the sleeping Mexican, sometimes called the sleepy poncho. It's a motif that you see across the American Southwest on restaurants, motels. I went to interview Dr. Maribel Alvarez. She's an anthropologist at the University of Arizona, and she's the keeper of probably the world's largest collection of sleeping Mexican memorabilia. She's got them all packed in her office: salt shakers, ashtrays, matchbooks, everything you can think of. There's a lot of variations to this figure, and she showed me one in which the PANCHO has a bottle of tequila next to him. But she explains that the origin of these images has nothing to do with drunkenness or laziness, and everything to do with American travel writers. The image starts showing up in the late 19th century, when Americans started visiting Mexican towns, and the hacienda system had brought a lot of indigenous farm workers into the haciendas to work, and it was common practice after lunch to lay down in the plaza, take a little rest. This struck the American visitors as unusual. So I'll let Maribel explain a little bit more about the origin.
Then the Americans began observing those things in travel logs to Mexico and began to notice the curious sort of representation of public sleeping. Public sleeping is not something that in the Puritan Anglo-Saxon tradition of the United States, we looked upon favorably because it represented, of course, lack of drive. For the indigenous worker, it was not read that way. It was read as renewal, restoration, getting up before the crack of dawn, attending to business, and then normally rejuvenating.
Dr. Alvarez plans to exhibit part of this collection in an exhibition that she plans to title Monument to the Hardest Working American. But talking to Dr. Alvarez got me interested in the question of who is allowed to nap, who is allowed to be seen napping, and who is allowed to shape the narrative around whether or not that nap is justified or deserved. After all, Thomas Edison had a dirty little secret. He napped constantly. And it wasn't even that much of a secret. He was photographed napping all the time. And here's one image. I don't know if you can see the caption, but it says, tearing off a nap after 72 hours of continuous work. So he gets control over the narrative around his nap. He's worked 3 days in a row, so he deserves it. Dr. Alvarez mentioned public sleeping. It's true that we don't really do this in the United States, but many urban planners actually argue that sleeping in public is the sign of a functioning society. This book, A Pattern Language, came out in the 70s, but it remains one of the best-selling texts on architecture and urban planning. And its authors argue that in a society that fosters trust, the fact that people sometimes want to sleep in public is the most natural thing in the world. But our society doesn't invite that kind of behavior. In our society, sleeping in public is thought of as an act for criminals and destitutes. And indeed, sleeping in public is criminalized in most of America. More than half of American cities prohibit even sitting or lying down in public places. 1 in 5 cities ban sleeping in public altogether. And this might not be something you think about if you have a bed and a safe place to sleep and you can nap anytime, but sleep deprivation is a massive problem affecting folks that don't have those things. Only about 1 in 4 unsheltered people say they have a safe and legal place to sleep, and 80% have been harassed by the police for sleeping in public. And as a result, sleep deprivation is a huge crisis among the homeless community, and it has disastrous consequences for health, for mental health, on and on and on. So there's this massive class divide when it comes to sleep and napping. There's also a massive and very well documented racial sleep gap in this country that cuts across socioeconomic class. And that's one of the issues that Tricia Hersey is working to address. I met Tricia here in Atlanta a couple of years ago. She's a performance artist and a graduate of Emory University Theological School, where she was studying Black liberation theology and working in the archives, researching slave narratives, when an idea started to take shape.
Reading slave narratives and seeing like what my ancestors went through on plantations here in America, that they really did not ever have a chance to rest with the commodification of their bodies. So in a way, I felt like I could rest for them now. I started to think about rest as just resistance, a resistance movement against capitalism. It pushes back and disrupts white supremacy. And I never thought that people would jump on board with it.
A couple of years ago, Trisha started holding what she calls communal napping events in Atlanta and Chicago, and she would invite the community to come and rest together. All were welcome, but it was designed specifically to be welcoming to Black Americans, who are 5 times more likely to be sleep deprived than their white counterparts. And Trisha was in seminary, so she called this her nap ministry, and she dubbed herself the Nap Bishop. And she ran the events kind of like church. She'd be a minister preaching to her flock. And the message that she preached was simple. It's okay to rest. And the response she got really surprised her.
People after the event come up to me and in tears and just come on the page and like, thank you for telling me this. I always thought I felt lazy. I felt bad. I felt embarrassed about napping. To see how deeply this system has brainwashed people, of all people, you know, it started with thinking about the plantations, but all people who are under the system here, they really are traumatized to the point of where even when they have space to sleep, they have a nice bed and there's time, they mentally cannot go there and rest. They feel so much shame.
Trisha's working to destigmatize napping, and her message is really resonating. All of which is to say that my 6th reason to take a nap, it subverts the capitalist paradigm and all the inequities baked into that. So I'm glad that the nap is making a comeback. I really am. I hope it's here to stay. But wouldn't it be great if we could look at napping not just as this frivolous little thing we're all doing during lockdown, but as something like a human right? Wouldn't it be cool if napping in the 21st century didn't just look like a high-tech nap pod that costs $10,000, but could just look like a young woman who feels relaxed enough to sleep in a park? Wouldn't it be great if napping was treated like a right of all citizens, kind of like it was in ancient Rome, where the right to a siesta was as much the mark of a citizen as the right to wear a toga or make a will? Or even in China, where the right to rest is written into the Constitution? I'm not sure how that's being interpreted these days, but my point is, normalizing napping has the potential to improve public health, improve public space, and create a world that's healthier, happier, safer, and more equitable. Capitalism may have all but killed the nap, but if we can save it from extinction, we just might save the world. Thanks.
You heard it here. Bring back the nap. Thank you, Maya.
Amazing. Sarah, I bet you have some questions you're thinking about already.
You know me, I am thinking about some questions, and I bet you have some questions, those of you who are watching it from your homes. So if you have some questions, now's the time to type them in or start thinking about them so you can type them in after the second lecture.
Write them down with your giant pencil, save them, and type them in a little bit later. But now...
It's intermission time, folks.
Now is the time in our program when we ask you for money. As you know, Mixed Taste is a collaboration between the DCPA and MCA Denver, and we have both been hard hit by the effects of COVID-19.
Mixed Taste is free online this summer, which allows everyone to be able to afford to enjoy it, but it takes a lot to produce Mixed Taste, and both of our organizations need your support now more than ever in order to continue programming like this.
If you have the means, please consider donating to support DCPA and MCA Denver. I just shared the link in the comment in the chat box, and it's dcpa.today/mixedtaste.
We suggest a donation of $20 per person, which is what we would normally charge for tickets, but of course, any amount helps and will be shared equally between our two organizations.
And I just want to lay it on a little thicker here in case the message isn't getting through. In the past 2 weeks, we've seen fewer than 20% of our live viewers donate. That means that 4 out of 5 of you enjoying this program and watching right now haven't shown your support by making a donation. So if you're one of those people, and if I'm making you feel even the slightest bit guilty, please, please consider donating now at dcpa.today/mixedtaste.
If everyone who was watching today donated even a small amount, even $5, it would go a long way to supporting our programming. So I'm going to go ahead and thank you in advance for your generosity and for your supports. And now let's play a game.
Each week, we play a game with the help of you and our poet. So this week, we're going to do our riff on the newlyweds game that we like to call the Work Colleagues game.
The Work Colleagues game. All right.
So first, we're going to welcome tonight's poet, Brenton Weyi. welcome Brenton.
Hi, Brenton.
Hey, Charlie. Hey, Sarah. How's it going?
Pretty good. Brenton, will you tell us the rules for the work colleagues game?
Yes, absolutely. So the purpose of this game is to test how well the two of you know each other. So I'm going to ask you 3 questions, and you each have to guess what the other person is going to answer. And whoever gets the most correct guesses wins the game. So the first question for both of you is, what was the last show you saw at the Denver Center before this crazy pandemic? So Sarah, you write down what you think Charlie's answer is going to be, and Charlie, you do the same for Sarah. And for those of you who are watching live, see you all out there, please share your answers. What do you think was the last show that either Charlie or Sarah saw at the Denver Center?
Okay, I've got it.
Alrighty, so Sarah, we'll start with you. What do you think was the last show Charlie saw?
I think the last show that Charlie saw at the Denver Center was SpongeBob the Musical.
SpongeBob, that's a good show. Charlie, was that the last show that you saw?
That is not correct. It was 2050 by Tony Manessas, our world premiere production.
They're very close, though. I can see. I get that confused.
I will say, Charlie, someone else also guessed SpongeBob, which is funny.
I mean, it was here relatively before everything shut down, so I think it's a fair guess.
Yeah,
we had multiple SpongeBobs in a mystery science.
See, a lot of people think you were taking your kids to see SpongeBob. All right.
Okay, Charlie, your turn for Sarah. What do you think was the last show she saw?
So I would have guessed Hamilton, but I know that Sarah hasn't seen Hamilton because she watched it for the first time on Disney Plus.
This is all true. No.
So I'm gonna guess the holiday classic, A Christmas Carol.
Ooh, A Christmas Carol.
It's a good guess, and it's very close. But actually, the last show I saw was Camp Christmas, which is an off-center show.
Yes, collaboration with local artist Lonnie Hands-On. Good guess. Good guess.
No, Mike Dunn had guessed you saw the improvised Shakespeare, which was also very good.
Oh, I mean, that's a good guess. It's a good guess. Not true, but a good guess.
Okay, so second question. What was the first exhibition that you saw at MCA Denver? So write down your answers. Someone said they're sad that they didn't see Mean Girls. I'm sad too.
No.
Okay, so Sarah, we'll start with you again. What do you think was the first exhibition Charlie ever saw at MCA?
Well, I don't really see Charlie down there that often, so I'm going to guess Tara Donovan, which was last year.
Just because we have meetings at my office most of the time does not mean I'm not attending the museum as a member. But my answer, I don't remember the name of it, but it was this immersive exhibition. It was like 10 years ago. There were lots of crystals and soft things you climbed through.
I got you, Charlie. It was Matt Barton's I Think I Feel Something. Was the exhibition that you're describing there. Crystals, immersive, climb through.
And I remember feeling something. So good title.
Yeah.
All right. And Sarah, you should know MCA is getting lots of love in the comments right now. So.
Oh, that's great. If you have other shows that maybe audience members can't remember who the artist was, you can type them in. And if I can think of it, I'll respond to you and say what the name of the artist was.
Sounds good. Okay. Now will we switch?
Okay.
Charlie, your turn.
So I had to do some homework on this one. I thought it was likely that Sarah saw the first big show at the new building whenever it opened 10 plus years ago. So that would have been Damien Hirst.
Good guess. Good guess. That was a big show at the MCA, and it was close to what I first saw. But the actual first show I saw was Star Power, and specifically, it was a show called Legend, which is a portrait of Bob Marley. And I know this because I was there too late, and I didn't work at the museum at the time. They actually asked me to leave the building. Little did they know I was going to come back and stick around for 10 years.
Nice. Excellent.
That's awesome. So. Fantastic for both of you. We're currently tied at 0-0.
Okay, so I'm not winning.
I'm going to ask the final question, and we'll reveal the answers after our next speaker. So the last question for the two of you will be, what is your all-time favorite mixed taste pairing?
Ooh.
So take your time, think about it, and we'll see your answers after our next talk.
Okay.
And now, on with the show.
Thank you, Brenton. I'd now like to introduce our second guest who will be teaching us about Slovenian zombies. Nancy Wadsworth is Associate Professor of Political Science at the University of Denver. She has given 7 mixed taste lectures before, and we're so excited to welcome her back to talk about her latest academic obsession. Please welcome Nancy Wadsworth.
Thank you so much to the DCPA and MCA for inviting me back again. I'm really glad we've found a way to make this work, even in what apparently we've all agreed to call these challenging times. Tonight, I'm going to tell you a story about Slovenia, one of the most beautiful countries in the world, and a story about zombies. Or more to the point, a story about how the figure of zombie became a catalyst for an uprising of Slovenians, how a symbol of mortification became a vehicle for collective awakening, and even a little spiritual renewal. I come to this story through an odd and surprisingly circular journey. My scholarship started at the intersection of politics and culture. My first projects were on race and religion in American political life. But this one summer, I was watching the AMC hit cable series, The Walking Dead, and I was totally struck by how major themes in the show were relevant to this introductory course I teach in political theory. I ended up redesigning my course to use selections from the zombie genre to illustrate classic concepts in political theory, such as the state of nature, the social contract, authoritarianism, communitarianism, and the state of exception, or the suspension of civil rights during a so-called crisis. I then began writing political theory articles related to zombies as political metaphors. Later, while tunneling down this Google wormhole, I found out about an actual political movement with zombies at the center in a small country I'd barely heard of called Slovenia. Eventually, I went there, interviewed people involved, and began collaborating with a Slovenian religion scholar about this movement and the new faith that came out of it. So basically, I found myself back in the study of religion and culture. It turns out that there's a fascinating interdisciplinary arena of scholarship on zombies and the cultural salience of monsters more broadly, which has taken me places I never expected to go. Something I find important in thinking about zombies is that they are multivalent. That is, they can convey multiple simultaneous meanings. Indeed, zombies embody paradox. They slip the boundaries of life and death, the individual and the multitude, impotence and agency. All human stories make meaning and deliver messages, but what the zombie stands in for depends on culture and time period, because different cultural moments generate different kinds of fears and fantasies. Also, zombie stories are not just about monsters, but human survivors under stressful conditions. How do we imagine how we would act? So in all these ways, zombie stories are fundamental reflections of human consciousness. The modern zombie derives from the Haitian voodoo tradition, in which the zombie, Z-O-M-B-I, is an enslaved human soul doing forced labor for a sorcerer. And this comes out of slavery in Haiti. That figure bears different symbolic meaning from, say, the rabid mall zombies of George Romero's imagination in Dawn of the Dead, or the creepy Southern walkers in The Walking Dead, or for that matter, the terrifying fast zombies of World War Z who scale the walls of Jerusalem during a global zombie pandemic. Regardless of the setting we put them in, zombies tap into big issues. What do we feel threatened by at any given moment? Zombies, like other monsters, can be a stand-in for those fears. Zombie narratives are also a vehicle for imagining worst-case scenarios. So imagining apocalypse, how would we organize power if the current state and society itself were stripped away? What is human nature? And related to that, what do we think is good leadership? Who and what do we value? What are our moral limits, and under what conditions would we violate them? Which is a question embodied by the character of Rick Grimes in The Walking Dead. What does it mean to be alive and also experiencing decay, destruction, and death? So let me provide some context for the appearance of the zombie in real-time Slovenia. Slovenia is a tiny little nation of 2 million people nestled between what today is Hungary, Croatia, and Italy. It's about the size of Massachusetts. And to make a very long ethnological story short, Slovenians have been trampled through, over, or on by just about every major power in Western history. The region has been inhabited since at least Neanderthal times, as shown by this 55,000-year-old bone flute, the oldest known musical instrument ever found. The Roman Empire used the territory for trade. The barbarians rampaged through it. And modern Slovenians are a distinct ethnic group and a distinct language group descended from Slavic settlers going back to the 7th century. In more recent memory, Slovenians spent several centuries under the reign of the photogenic Habsburg monarchy, and then were subjected to territorial battles in both world wars. At one point during World War II, Slovenia was occupied by fascist Italy, Nazi Germany, and Hungary at the same time. After the war, Slovenia spent 4.5 decades inside the Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. But they were the first new republic to break from Tito's regime and held their first free elections in 1990. What I want you to take away from all this is that Slovenians are a proud and resilient people who've lived through every possible type of political regime, which makes them a bit fatalistic when it comes to political power. So we've all seen a lot of graphs lately, and I want you to note that this graph measures national debt in Slovenia, not the COVID curve. In 2012, following that other global economic recession that began in 2009, Slovenians were getting restless. Under the right-wing administration of Prime Minister Janez Janša, citizens were feeling economically squeezed and politically demoralized. Suffice to say, it was a combination of recession pain, anguish over the loss of national industries, and the robust social safety net Slovenians once had under socialism, and anger over corruption. October 2012 was a tipping point. A scandal erupted in the northeastern city of Maribor over a high-tech traffic monitoring system, which charged drivers enormous fines for speeding, and 93% of the proceeds were being pocketed by a private corporation. Slovenians, who it happens love to drive and love to speed, were furious that funds collected at their expense were profiting billionaires instead of the public purse during an economic crisis. This became a galvanizing emblem of injustice. People who were already economically squeezed were watching rich corporations fleece them. Residents of Maribor vandalized all the traffic radars and poured into the streets for a series of protests against corruption. By November 2012, the protests had spread across the country in what would come to be called the All-Slovenian Uprising. A diverse coalition of Slovenians joined, from veterans to LGBT folks, anarchists to labor unions, environmentalists to artists. People coined the larger events protestables because they were not mere marches and demonstrations, but big festive mass actions involving singing and dancing, street theater, and cacophonous noise, especially banging of pots and pans, which was borrowed from Iceland's revolution, also during the economic recession, to signal the people's displeasure outside the House of Parliament. The protestables were also sites of alternative civic space, efforts to express a polity more vibrant and democratic than what Slovenians were experiencing under the established political regime. Then, in late December 2012, in the wake of a large protest, Prime Minister Janša's SDS party sent out a tweet. The translation is #uprising, Communist International, rhetoric of civil war, totalitarian symbols, uprising of zombies, not people's uprising. You might notice some familiar capitalization there. With the tweet, Janša's party had launched what it probably hoped was a poison arrow, denigrating this people's uprising as an ugly relic of the old left, Slovenians under communism. The tweet landed with a thud. The protesters were like, he called us zombies? Because the thing is, before Yugoslavian communism collapsed and Janša became a hyper-capitalist politician, he was the head of the communist youth. So this tweet rang as a completely absurd attack from a craven opportunist. Some of the folks I interviewed told me how they interpreted the meaning of zombie in the tweet. One said, What he wanted to say was, it's a resurrection of the old system. All of these people are communists, which should be dead and is dead. Another said, like literally the Walking Dead. You are walking the streets. You don't have a mind of your own. You are somebody else's puppet. This was the final insult. Another said, we were like, okay, we are the zombies. We are the scary ones, and we want changes. The tweet struck, said another person, against him, against Janša, because the protesters took this as a badge of honor, and it became huge. Literally overnight, people from the arts and theater communities turned insult into opportunity. They organized workshops on mask making, using paper, paint, and all manner of art supplies. And literally the next day, zombies were in the streets. Protesters had reappropriated the zombie, changing it from an insult into a proud act of defiance. They showed up in handmade masks, in face paint, and with puppets, and happily lighting festive bonfires. In an act of theatrical judo, protesters had turned the tables on Janša's zombie epithet. They reconfigured the insult into a catalytic political visual of fully embodied community dissent. TV and international news outlets now captured officials facing down a zombie horde. Slovenia had birthed a new collective force, movement zombies. These movement zombies also drew on an old Slovenian tradition, puppeteering, and with a beloved young puppeteer named Matija Solce, who's holding that big puppet in the upper right, helping orchestrate the visual effort, this was the beginning of the end for the prime minister. Between 2012 and March 2013, so just in a short period of 3 months, protesters leveraged two distinctive valences of the zombie symbol. And here I use photographer Luka Dox-Kobler's narrated photos to illustrate. On one hand, they capitalized on the ravenous zombie, which is especially destructive en masse. But they also reversed the symbol so as to focus the political ire on corrupt elites like Prime Minister Janša, but also the mayors of Maribor and Ljubljana. So the zombie that needs to die, according to the protesters, is reframed as the corrupt state. And in the large street protests, they made the most of the specter of the zombie horde. Here, they're carrying, if you can see that, a coffin to symbolically bury the corrupt state. In these protests, the zombie becomes a rare figure with the capacity to harness the all too familiar but routinely suffocated rage of Slovenians facing yet another set of leaders and systems under which they feel exploited and abused. At the same time, as I mentioned, the zombie figure helped materialize a counter context, a space for alternative community with ethics and culture, passion and vision. The Slovenian protest zombie became a kind of holy adversary to the neoliberal regime and its expectations that citizens be passive, compliant, undemanding workers. And perhaps most interestingly, zombies achieved a lot. As a result of the protests, in early 2013, the Commission for the Prevention of Corruption ordered an investigative report into the actions of political party leaders. That report revealed that at least 2 leaders had systematically and repeatedly violated the law by engaging in corrupt schemes that misused public funds. In late February 2013, Janša's government fell in a no-confidence vote, and the corrupt zombie of the state ultimately served a prison term. A new left party, signed by a rising star, Luka Mesic, who had been active in the protests, he's sort of like Slovenia's answer to Justin Trudeau, won 10% of the vote to earn seats in parliament and usher in a period of reform. So it turns out that zombies can indeed be a potent force when they're motivated. Another interesting thing happened during the All-Slovenian uprising once zombies had come onto the scene. In the creative atmosphere of the protestivals, one group of protesters saw spiritual potential in the zombie and started framing matters in religious terms. Maybe what they had was a kind of religious community, a source of spiritual uplift. After all, Slovenia was historically a deeply religious nation. The Roman Catholic Church, the dominant religion, has churches across every hill and vale in the country. And those churches clang their bells night and day. In most places, literally every 15 minutes. reminding everyone of Catholicism's presence, whether they like it or not. Indeed, when people objected to the disruption, the church lobbied for the legislature to classify the ringing of the bells not as noise, but as religious music, and thereby protected from noise ordinances. But Slovenia is a free republic with church-state separation clauses enshrined in its constitution. Some protesters mused, why not give religious liberty protections a test and start a zombie church? I think we have to bring that hand back in the right timing. Wherein our right to bang pots and pans and to ring our own bell will fall under the same rights granted to the Catholic Church. The energy behind starting a zombie church came from a guy named Kroth, his wife Andrea, and some of their friends who I interviewed. You might consider them committed lunatics. Just as the protest movement was winning its big victories in March, Kroth and friends inaugurated themselves members of the zombie Church of the Blissful Ringing. Later, they added trans-universal to designate that, unlike the Catholic Church, the potential of their religion extended beyond the known universe. They set up a Facebook group, worked out some shared beliefs, designed a logo, and in 2014, published their Bible, the Holy Book of the Zombie Church. The church formed around a couple basic ideas. First, as Kroth put it to me, if you have protests, you need everything. You need people with a cultural background. You need people molesting the authorities. You need people who are good at media. And the church was brought up because many of the people protesting really needed some support. And then second, because the dominant churches mostly aligned with the same conservative government protesters were protesting, the people needed, they figured, an alternative religion. While I don't have time to elaborate on the contents of the Holy Book, I'll share a few highlights. Blissful ringing refers then to the banging of bells and pots and pans outside the Parliament building to protest corruption whenever members wish. So here's a motley crew of zombie church members outside Parliament protesting something. And they're protesting as a matter of religious right. They're claiming this before the state. It also indirectly mocks the Catholic Church, though zombie church members will tell you they're not making fun of any other religion. The zombie church has its own holidays, which include these two favorites of mine, the holiday of the stolen holiday and the Holy Lazy Monday. And these are signals to Yugoslavian socialism, in which there were way more days off than under hyper-capitalist Slovenia now. Articles of faith, which are still being added, include the origins of the world, starting not with a big bang, but a big bong, or the ringing of the first protest bell of the All-Slovenian Uprising. And that zombie holy drinks should include beer and pina coladas. That paradise will come to believers in their own image, and the zombie church embraces radical nonviolence and is open to anyone except sex offenders. The trans-universal zombie church of the Blissful Ringing is what scholars call an invented religion, a religion that announces its invented status and draws on popular culture to create a niche product in a culture that's increasingly religiously fragmented. But invented religions can engage in societies in interesting ways. For example, they help consolidate community, as the zombie church has tried to do by setting up shared beliefs, identifying rituals, identifying holidays, and ceremonies, marriages, and so forth. They can register with the state, in this case, the Ministry of Culture, to become an official religion, which forces the state to contend with questions of religious equality in a liberal society. They advocate for equal rights, and in this case, they advocated for representation in the chaplaincy, in prisons, and in the military, and for the state to give them access to funds for nonprofit humanitarian organizations, as other religious organizations have. And they push the status quo, especially in a country with a dominant religion. In essence, they can become a menace for democracy. So, Slovenian zombies can be standard bearers for the times we're living through, and they shouldn't be foreign to Americans who have a rich history of creating protests of our own. Zombies remind us that state power is always susceptible to corruption and overreach. People subjected to tyrannical regimes don't forget that. Vigilance is important, and there are few things more powerful than an awakened citizenry. Protest can be artful and funny, full of mockery and play, and still be effective. Moreover, protest is an important way for citizens to engage in democracy, as Slovenians did again this year in weekly bicycle protests against another conservative regime that rose from the dead under Janša. And in the upper left, that's some of the moms in Portland just in recent days. Protest is not what hurts a democracy, as some seem to think. It is when we citizens become truly zombified that democracy is finished.
I love that.
So good. Well, before we get into the Q&A, I know we have lots of connections and questions bubbling. We're going to bring Brenton back to finish our game.
Turn back the clock and come with me.
Yes, thank you, Charlie. Let's turn back the clock indeed and see what your all-time favorite mixed taste pairing is. So Sarah, we're starting with you before. We'll start with Charlie this time. Charlie, what is Sarah's all-time mixed taste pairing?
And audience there, if you want to guess too, join with me.
Please. What is Sarah's?
So I know that Sarah has talked to me about this one before, and it's been used in marketing materials from the past. So I'm hoping that this might be one that has stuck with her. It is existentialism and giant vegetables.
That was such a great mixed taste. There are so many mixed tastes that are great. I loved that one.
Does that mean I didn't win?
No, you didn't. My favorite mixed taste is Carl Jung and Bigfoot, which is actually given by tonight's mixed taste speaker, Nancy Wadsworth. She spoke on this legendary topic. She spoke not on Bigfoot, because it could go either way. She spoke on Carl Jung. It was très magnifique.
Awesome. Well, Sarah, it's the glory is all up to you. So what's your guess?
Okay, I've heard Charlie speak about this one a lot. I think his favorite mixed taste pairing was celery and emo wrap.
Oak. Remember that one.
That was a good one. And Maya, our speaker tonight, spoke on celery. That is maybe it's definitely in my top 3 that I've been involved with in the past 4 years. But this one is what I wrote down. Ooh, wait. Air traffic control and drag queen activism. It was not just that we had a drag queen lecture, but also the combination of the guy from DIA who spoke, who had never met a drag queen before. So it was just a pretty magical moment.
There's so many good mixed tastes.
That's amazing. Well, it looks like it's a tie between the two of you.
At 0, it's a tie. At 0.
We really did well here, guys.
I don't know about the work colleagues game, Charlie.
Thank you, Brenton. We're going to send you back to prepare for your conclusion this evening. And we're going to head into the Q&A.
All right.
Here's how it works. Type your questions in the live chat box. We're going to bring Maya and Nancy back, and they'll take your questions on both topics at the same time. We encourage you to draw connections here between the two if you can. So if you're able to draw a connection between napping and Slovenian zombies, we will celebrate that with the gong.
That's good. Yeah, Charlie's got the gong tonight.
Working on the sound.
All right, we are going to give a very special prize tonight to the person who asks the question that makes the best connection. So submit your questions through the live chat, which is over there. And now we're going to bring our speakers back and get started. Okay. Charlie, you want to tell them how it's going to work tonight?
So here's how it's going to work. Sarah is sticking her nose in the comments. She's going to be sorting through them, fielding them, and putting them up on the screen. I will be reading the comments and gonging the gong whenever there is a connection made. I'm fascinated as we get started because I started to see all sorts of connections that I had no idea when we put this together. Who would have thought where we're heading with this Q&A? Sarah, are you ready with a question?
I think I've got one. I'm going to pull it up here. We've got one from Christine Petty, and she asks, are zombies like the nap, also victims of capitalism. It seems that Jansa and Trump are related, meow, and Black Lives Matter.
Well done, well done.
Well, of course, people might know that Trump's wife is from Slovenia, and she might be anchoring a certain valence of the zombie, but that's not the protest movement zombie that we were talking about. I do think capitalist makes us a certain kind of sort of bad zombie. But we're in a really interesting period right now where the zombies are maybe rising up in both countries at the same time.
Maya, anything you want to add to that?
No, I'm just going to stick with Nancy's. The zombies are a little bit, well, I don't know. I want to give people a chance to come up with more
All right,
questions.
Sarah, bring up the next one.
I've got another one. This is a question for Maya, and it's not a crossover question, which is fine. You don't have to ask crossover questions. It's just a short little question from Maya that is from Katie Easton, and she asks, and we're all wondering, what is the optimal length of a nap?
That is a great question, very frequently asked. I think if you ask NASA, which has done one of the most cited studies, the answer is 26 minutes precisely. But so most sleep researchers say 20 to 30 minutes, unless they say something else, which a lot of them do. So sometimes the optimal nap might be 90 minutes. Sometimes it's 20. It actually depends on what you're hoping to get out of your nap. There's actually an entire book called Take a Nap, Change Your Life that has chapters devoted to what kind of nap to take at what time of day for how long, if you're a creative person and you want to get a little bit more creative juice, or if you're an athlete and you want more better motor coordination and stuff like that. So check that book out if you're interested.
Okay, we've got another question here. I'm going to pull it up. This one is from John Bechtold. And I believe John won last week for crossover question. Isn't that right, Charlie?
He did.
Nice to see you again in the comments, John. All right, this is from John. He asks, zombies are characterized as capitalists par excellence, pure action, pure consumption. Is there an anti-zombie symbol that could be appropriated to manifest rest in the face of capitalist grinding?
Very nice, very nice.
Do you want to start that, Maya?
Is there an anti-zombie symbol? No, I think you're going to have to start this one.
I mean, especially in the 70s and 80s, when I talked about how zombies are kind of contingent on time and place. In the 70s and 80s, they were often associated in American film with rabid consumerism. In the 90s, with other things. Fear of AIDS, fear of global pandemic, fear of immigration, border crossings, and other things. I think that this, at least if we can use the Slovenian zombies as an inspiration, they would be very pro-napping. I think napping would be a legitimate part of the protestables you could have, because they're trying to create an alternative cultural community, and that could include shaded nap spaces. And again, you can still say, so there is that robust movement zombie that's the that's not sleeping on democracy, but resting in the face of capitalist pressures is something that those zombies would absolutely support. I'm not sure what the symbol of that could be. Maybe it could be a mat or a pillow.
There's actually an interesting history of the figure of the sleepy Pancho that has also been similarly adopted to kind of subvert the original message. Remember in Arizona a few years ago, they tried to ban ethnic studies curriculum, and the students at ASU actually made T-shirts with the Sleepy Pancho figurine on them, except under his hat, he wasn't napping, he was reading all of the banned books. So I think Sleepy Pancho could do a lot of work for us here.
I'm going to give that an extra gong, because I think there's some really good connections there. And I just like gonging this gong.
The gong is fun.
When you have a gong, you got to gong it.
All right, I'm going to go to one that was a little earlier in the questions. This one's coming in from Bill Holland, and it goes to the Church of the Slovenian Zombies. I'm getting the name wrong. Bill asks, does Holy Lazy Monday encourage the doubling of nap time on that day? If not, shouldn't it?
Absolutely. I think Holy Lazy Monday would definitely include the doubling of nap time, or napping all day, or napping and drinking pina coladas, alternating between those two things.
Yeah, I came across a similar concept to Holy Lazy Monday. Saint Monday was a concept that was around in England, I think. E.P. Thompson writes a lot about Saint Monday. There were a lot of official and unofficial holidays back before industrialization and capitalism took over everything, when a lot of people were kind of working for themselves more, running their own little workshops and managing their own schedules. And Saint Monday was a day of relaxation, possibly napping off a hangover.
I love it.
There you go. All right, I've got another one here. This one is coming in from Saraswati 009. I love these names. Sleeping and rest has been used in the past as a form of political protest. Think Lenin and Ono. I believe that's John and Yoko. Maya, do you have thoughts of collectively resting as an effective drag on capitalism for political change?
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is like a nap in, like specifically what it's calling for. But one thing that I really liked about speaking with Tricia Hersey, the Nat Bishop, was she's advocating for people to stop and rest. And a lot of times she holds her collective napping events on a Monday afternoon at 2 p.m. And I asked her, how are people supposed to make this work with a job and everything? And she sort of resisted giving me an answer, which I liked, because it's not about trying to make this nap fit into the system and not disrupt everything else that's going on. It's about something much bigger and much more systemic. So that's what this question made me think of.
This is just a quick question. We're going to bring it up. And I think it gets to some of the thoughts about zombies and Catholicism, Protestantism that you danced around. So who's the patron saint of napping? I don't know if you know that.
I know this one. The patron saint of napping is Saint Benedict. He was a monk in the 6th century, and I think this was the first time that a nap became like a line item in a monk's daily schedule. So, they have this strict schedule of getting up, and then they pray, and then they work, and they pray again, and then they have lunch. And then it's written into the Rule of St. Benedict, this 1,500-year-old document, that after lunch you go and you lay on your bed in total silence. And they even say monks, they can talk amongst themselves, but really they should not be whispering too loud. This was a sacred time, and it sort of is translated kind of cheekily in some Catholic countries that observing the siesta is kind of a mark of a good Christian even. So that all goes back to St. Benedict.
Do you have anything to add on that, Nancy? Or
I mean, the thing I'm thinking is just that really truly resting or actually sleeping is, I think that the zombies I studied would say that's an absolute great form of resistance to capitalism. What doesn't work as well is just zoning out, like watching TV. That works for capitalism. And even sometimes maybe just deadly scrolling, while it can seem restful, can also be ways that we're still plugged into the system and we're not restoring ourselves for the fight or for the, for the resistance.
That's such good advice. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Charlie. Early in the comments, I'm not going to pull it up because I'd have to scroll through it and find it, but a lot of people were mentioning that those every 15-minute bells in Slovenia would really hinder the napping process. All right, I've got one to pull up, and Charlie, you can tell me how much more.
I think
time
maybe one or two more.
Okay, this one is a multi-part, so let's see if we can do this. We're going to do part one. Here we go. This is from Evan Pollock, who thanks you both for the incredible presentations, which I second. My question is about about sleep deprivation. This is his question, of course, and the creative process. Maya, I know you've touched upon the topic, given the DALI example of, I'll let you say that word.
Hypnagogic.
There you go. Okay. And in part 2. And his creative process through the power of short/nap sleep. Can you give us an idea of how the lack of sleep often shifts the balance of consciousness and can influence or inspire the creative process? And Nancy, similarly, can you speak to the topic of the bells? Oh, he gets to that, which several other people have mentioned in the comments. In Slovenia, creating potential creative zombie space through potential sleep deprivation. All right, we'll pull that off.
I don't really have much on like the neuroscience of sleep deprivation. I'm kind of going the other direction from personal experience. I know it can get pretty weird in there if you go too long without sleeping. But I have found personally that as I've developed a nap practice over the last 7-8 years, it's helped my creative process to have more sleep, to be better rested. I think when you're putting your brain through its paces, it's not necessarily, it might make you feel a little bit more kooky, but your brain's just trying to survive. So feed it sleep, and it will pay you back with creativity.
Yeah, my thought is, in general, sleep deprivation works for the man. I think from the movement zombie perspective, but sometimes sleep deprivation can lead to some interesting, strange connections across those like broken synapses. And I'm thinking of a person who's told me before that sometimes when she hasn't slept all night, she has really interesting, weird ideas in the morning. So maybe it's possible, but I think the church bells don't get to be ringing when you've had no say in that, and had them be called music when they're actually noise.
Yeah. Wow.
Awesome.
I'm thinking about that creative process in the time where we're all getting those extra naps in because we're all working from home. All right, I've got our last question for tonight. Here we go.
And this is from Detlink Bloom, who I happen to know. It's Detmar and Lincoln. Shout out, and their family watching. This is a great question.
Okay, so I'll read it off, and thank you for pronouncing it because I would have gotten that wrong.
Well, I just happen to know the lingo.
As everyone from poets to horror movie makers recognize, both sleep and zombies are a kind of temporary or suspended death. What does that say about them in relation to our COVID-riven society? Good going, Charlie.
Good question.
I mean, zombies remind us that we are always dying. And we always have periods of unconsciousness. In some ways, when we are not awake psychologically in terms of our consciousness, we are the kind of walking dead. So again, it goes back to the valences. What does it mean? Does it mean that we stop connecting with each other? We stop connecting as citizens? Or is that is being a zombie sort of a state of human reality? It's an existential state. We are all zombies at some point, every 24 hours, and at some point in our lives. We are decaying now, and we are on our way to dying, and we're going to die. And we also sleep. So half the time we're out of it.
Yeah, I agree. I think, sleep and napping, sleep is a liminal state, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of an in-between place.
Yes.
And we're definitely in between a lot of stuff. We don't know how this is going to come out. We don't know when it's going to be over. We don't know if everything's going to be different forever. And I think getting comfortable in that in-between place, as we've all had to do, you have an opportunity to plumb those depths, I think. And hopefully something about this moment will stick with us.
Wow. Those are good thoughts. Thank you.
A great place to wrap it up. Thank you both.
Yeah.
So now it's prize time.
Every week, we give a very special prize to the person who asks the best question in the comments. And how we choose that is, well, Charlie and I don't. We turn it over to the Denver Center's marketing manager, Cheyenne Michaels. Shout out to Cheyenne. And she has chosen her favorite question, and she determines who gets the night's prize. So What is that prize, Charlie?
Well, we commissioned artist Carolyn Michaels, who created all the wonderful felt art that you see in our mixed taste artwork this year. You can find her on Instagram at Carolyn Does It. And she created original keychain mini felted objects that we will mail to the winner of this prestigious award. So who's our winner tonight, Sarah?
Well, tonight our winner is, and I'm going to get I'm going to have you say it because
I see it here. I can announce it if you want.
Yeah, thanks.
The final question, Detmar and Lincoln Bloom. Congratulations.
All right.
What do they win? What do they win?
They win this amazing prize. This is a little felted zombie. Can you see?
Get closer.
Tongue is out, and you've got the eyeball popping out here. And on the top, look, brains.
So good. All right, I got the envelope.
Okay.
Pass it over to me.
Here we go. And got it?
Got it.
Okay.
We will mail it to you. Congratulations.
Awesome. All right.
So if you can email us at offcenter@dcpa.org, we will send you your prize. Congratulations. Again, that's offcenter@dcpa.org.
And now let's invite Brenton back to enlighten us with an original poem inspired by tonight's talks.
Brenton Weyi is a Denver-based writer, thinker, and creative polymath. Welcome, Brenton.
Hey, Charlie, thank you so much. And Sarah, this has been an amazing evening. So I know normally a lot of poets, they write a poem during the event, but I like to do something a little bit different. I'm gonna give you all a verse of a different kind, but in order to do that, I'm actually going to need your help. So in the comments, if you could write one of two things, either one, what are you going to be taking away from the two talks that you heard tonight? Or two, what is your favorite nap or zombie related thing? So maybe it's like your favorite zombie movie or your favorite zombie toy as a kid or a TV show, or maybe the favorite plush toy that you used to nap with when you were a kid. So either what are you walking away with, or what is your favorite nap or zombie related thing? If you could just throw those into the comments, I would so appreciate it. So I'm gonna be looking here for a quick sec. Naps against capitalism, I love that. Okay, so fill in the comments and we'll get things started here, and I'll just be reading them off. Ooh, zombie, that's great. Okay, let's do it. Oh, actually, all right, I think I'm gonna have to do this a little bit of a different way because I need to be able to see the comments at the same time. Okay, perfect, here we go. Good comments coming in. Good comments coming in. Okay, so I was hanging out, I was napping in the sauna. No, I was in Slovenia, I was in Ljubljana, because we are hanging out, we are talking about times, we're talking about zombies protesting against the crimes, because right now, you know they ain't stopping me. Powell says napping outside is public policy. We're bringing it back, we have stories to tell. Don't interrupt the nap because it is the zombie bells, because right now, we are playing the fiddle. Andrea says naps are best preceded by a little diddle, because we are connecting. We heard some stories. When we had the zombie mass, we are seeking the glory, because right now we are getting the crew. Oh, they all nap Edison. I saw you too, because I want to ask you not to be late. It's Salvador Dali, put me in a hypnagogic state. We are talking summer naps. We are talking hammocks, because right now when you're standing up for rights, just don't slam it, because right now, you know, it is not shook. Susie says she's talking about the zombie cookbook. We are hanging out because you know we don't creep. It's community trust, Eva, and it's public sleep. My Chinese crested doggies, best nap buddies, because right now, yes, we are playing in the puddle. So put me to sleep and put me to rest, because right now, yes, we are passing the test. Don't be a capitalist zombie. Don't let them keep you awake. Take your rest, because it is your right to take. So right now, we are making the band. Someone rise up and take me to zombie land. That's where we find freedom. That's where we need them, because you provided amazing comments. That's where we read them. Someone said Twinkies, and I'll give you a blink B, because right now I'm not a fool, because Linda says cats rule. So thank you so much. You had the best attitude. Mixed taste, please leave with my gratitude. And right now, it's been a very good night. Don't be a zombie. Please get some sleep tonight.
Oh my God. I loved that so much.
Mind blown.
For sure.
Brenton, you have outdone yourself.
Yeah, that was truly very excellent. Mwah. All right. Well, thank you all at home for watching tonight. If you enjoyed tonight's program, and if you have the means, please consider donating right now at dcpa.today/mixtaste. Your one donation supports two great organizations, the Denver Center for the Performing Arts and the Museum of Contemporary Art, Denver.
Again, we suggest gifts of $20 per person, which is what we would normally charge for tickets, but any amount helps and will be shared equally between the organizations. Remember, if you're one of those 4 out of 5 people watching but not giving, change that today. Your generosity helps us continue programming like this and weather the COVID storm, so thank you.
Thank you. And let's bring everyone back to say goodnight. So thank you, Maya. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Brenton. Thank you to our presenting sponsor, Blue Room. Blue Room is a private investment company born of invention, forward thought, and hope. Through best-in-class investing, they create space to amplify the power of human togetherness and to change the world. And thank you also to Peggy Finley for your support.
And finally, thanks to you, our virtual audience, for your excellent questions and your socially distant engagement. We'll see you next week for Augmented Reality and the Cult of the Dead. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.
Good night.